So welcome everyone. My name is Emily Dayton. I am the admissions advisor for the full-time MSBA program at the Rady School of Management at UC San Diego. And first of all, thank you so much for taking time out of your day, whether you're in the United States or a similar time zone. It's early in the morning for you. And if you're elsewhere in the world, it's the end of your day. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day to hear a little bit about the Capstone project component of Rady's MSBA program. Just some general housekeeping information. Our executive director, Keith, is going to do a short presentation, and we will absolutely be taking questions at the end of that. So feel free when we get to the question portion. You can also enter your questions into the chat along the way. But when we get to the question section or portion, you can enter questions into the chat, or if you want to use the hand raise feature on the reaction button and ask your question yourself, we'll also be happy to do that. This is the 4th virtual event that the Business Analytics program has done. So this virtual event is only going to cover some highlights of the Capstone project experience of the program. We've already done some online webinars that covered the general program, application tips, and even a master class with one of the faculty. So if you weren't able to participate in those and have not watched those recordings, we'd be happy to share them out. But today's webinar is only going to capture kind of the highlights and the benefits of the Capstone project. And with that, Keith, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Right. Thank you. Thanks to my partner, Emily, for this project. And while we're only covering Capstone today, it's one of the most practical and important parts of the MSBA program and the experience here. So we think it's worth spending a bit of time on it. And so my role as executive director is overseeing the MSBA program. And also, just by way of background, so I have background in academics, but also in real world. I ran my own businesses for about 20 years and have run a number of capstones from UCSD over that time. So I've kind of got good experience on both sides of the equation that we'll talk about today, which is what's it like for a student, as well as what's it like for the companies that partner with us in running capstones. So today's topic around the capstones is kind of the why and the what. Why do we do them? Why it's important to the program, and do we think to your education and preparation? And then what's unique about it from our standpoint? And as you can imagine, capstones they're an experiential learning component, and they're also a way for you to start interacting with local and larger organizations that we partner with that are interested in business analysts and data scientists. So I thought I might start just with a quick little quiz to see, get everybody's minds working, whether you're in kind of early in the morning or late at night, wherever you are. And so I wanted to ask you to use your chat really quick and just enter in 2 numbers. And the question I have for you is, when it comes down to experiential types of learning, if you think about it, when you attend a lecture, on average, how much does the average student recall after a week of hearing a lecture, and kind of a % of the content that they heard, versus how much do they learn and how much they remember when they actually do a project based on that learning after a couple weeks? So if you want to enter into the chat, just put 2 numbers. How much do you think the average student retains from a lecture, and how much, what percentage of information they retain after doing something live? And I'll give us just a minute or 2 to see if we have any responses.
Awesome. We have some responses coming in. Keith, I know you said you weren't going to be able to have the chat open, so I'm just going to read some off. So 40 and 70, so 40% in class versus 70% in experiential learning, 60-80, 50-80, 70-40, 10-80, 20-80, 40-75, 50-75, 40% and 70%, or 40-80, 40-80, 30-80. So I think there's some patterns.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. It sounds like there's some consistency in that. I happen to think that when it comes to people in our profession, that's generally a pretty good number. We tend to be students that focus on the detail, the numbers. That's what draws us to areas like business analytics and data sciences. I'll show you what some research shows here, and this is not just for business analytics. This would be across all kinds of education. But the numbers can be pretty striking. As you see, some research shows that if you just attend the lecture, you're retaining about 5%. If you're actually practicing by doing, second from the bottom, maybe retaining up to 75%. And dramatic numbers, it's really why we do experiential projects like Capstone. It's to engage you in what you learned during the program, and capstones happen late in the program. It gives you a chance to apply everything that you're learning, as well as interacting with companies. And we'll talk a little bit about the value of that coming up. But just to back up, I know that most of you have attended at least one session with us to learn about the MSBA program. Our purpose really is preparing future analytics leaders, and whether that's in a management capacity or as a technical leader. And one of the ways that we do that, one of the values that we think are important, is preparing you with most current ideas and most current tools and technologies, including emergent technologies in areas like data preparation and analytics. And these come to the fore really in our Capstone projects, as we'll talk about. It's a way for you to show off your capabilities to a broad array of companies that may be of interest to you. That's of course interesting to companies and interesting to you hopefully as well in terms of internships, in terms of networking, and in terms of hiring. And so overall, our program is meant to engage you in learning new technologies, new tools, and then put those to practical purpose. And it fits within the philosophy we have for how we educate people around business analytics. There's really three pillars you can identify here. It's really the three areas that we're focusing on to deliver real business value. And you can consider it as a cycle of identifying the types of problems you can address, figuring out ways to actually address them, and then executing projects around that. It's a whole cycle. Our program itself, in terms of our core and elective coursework, covers all of these areas in the context of learning specific skills and applying them in specific areas through electives. And then the place that all really comes together and you get to put a lot of these skills together over the course of the program is in the Capstone projects. And that's why we really think they're important and we place a priority on them. So what is a Capstone project? A lot of you may be familiar. It's not necessarily a unique idea of doing project work, but our approach really maximizes the student value as well as the value to our partners. It's based on kind of 6 years of experience we have working and refining our approach. And we'll go over what's unique about that in a minute. But the main thing is, at the end of our program, beginning to engage in real world activities. It's the transition from the student role to the real working world role. And so what is a capstone? Well, there are real projects done with real companies. We solicit them every year, twice a year, from an array of different types of companies. Our faculty screen and select the ones that we think are the best fit for our students and the best fit based on interests. The contents of the capstones are a little bit unique. So we focus on three core components: descriptive analytics, which is really preparing and understanding data. Each one of them should have a predictive component. So it's the ability and opportunity to apply predictive modeling methodologies, any array of them, to the project. And last of all, a prescriptive component, which is really thinking through, when we do analysis on our projects, how do we communicate to the company what the value is they get from this analysis and how they can apply it to their business. And I can tell you that all of the project companies that we work with find that a real high value. And then you have a lot of control over the process. So what we'll typically do is solicit a number of proposals. Once we screen them, we have you rank them in terms of your interests, and then we form teams around those interest groups and have them assigned to specific companies. And how does it work overall? All capstones are team-based. They may be anywhere from a 4 to 6 person team. They run the length of our spring quarter or our fall quarter, which is typically 12 weeks. There's a good degree of support around these. So we assign each team a faculty supervisor that works directly with you, meets with you continuously throughout the project to help you with all aspects of executing the project and delivering value. We also start the project with a course. It's now an elective, but it'll soon be a requirement. It's called Business Analytics Consulting. And it's a short course. It helps you understand, if you think of yourself as a consultant in these projects, how to prepare for doing that work. And it's everything from how to formulate a good business problem that you're going to address with analytics, to conducting a kickoff call with the company that you'll be engaging with, to seeing it through to the end and preparing deliverables. And that's a great way. And most of our faculty have a lot of experience in this area of generating projects and delivering them. So great resource. And we also have business communications coaches and sometimes alumni that work with us. And we bring those up. Those are pretty unique. The business communications coaches are actually professional coaches with backgrounds in business presentation. Some are from theater. And it's one of the key ways that we really help build value, because as you can think about everything that we're doing as business analysts, a lot of it is the technical aspect, but also a lot of it has to be communicating with our teammates and with our management about the work that we're doing and the value that it has. We can do a lot of work. If we're not communicating it effectively, that can kind of fall short in terms of overall value. So we place an emphasis on that, and you'll be working with a communications coach at a couple points during the Capstone project. So as I think about that, I wanted to ask you a real quick question, which is, if we're doing a lot of communications coaching, it would fall within the area called soft skills. What are the types of things that we need to be good at when we're communicating? So I thought I might also ask you just really quick to use the chat box again. And as you think about it, here's a little quick review of a company I listed on Google talking about the importance of soft skills in technical professions. But use the chat box and tell me maybe a word, in a word or two, what types of soft skills you might think be really interesting and valuable for data scientists and business analytics analysts to have. And we'll give you just a second around that as well. And a good example might be cooperation. Emily, if you could read off a couple as they come in just real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. So we have intuition, communication, interpersonal skills, audience-driven, communication, asking the right questions.
Good. Those are great.
Right now. Yeah, those are great.
Yeah, those are all really good. Asking the right questions, certainly an element of, if you're going to do analysis, we need to ask the right question, and then tailoring your presentation to the audience in front of you, whether it's a team of data scientists or a chief marketing officer. Very different conversations that we might have. We want you to be prepared for both. And interesting to note, if you look at overall some of the research, those are all noted, so right on track. Some of the other ones I think are kind of unique to business analysts are curiosity. So the reason we get into this field, I mean, if you love working with data and you like answering interesting business questions, then definitely a program like the MSBA is for you. Second is skepticism. And so that would speak to the fact that, as data scientists, we want to collect data, make decisions based on data, make recommendations based on data. And we have to have a healthy respect for leveraging not only kind of what we know about the context and domain, but also what the data is telling us. And then last of all, perseverance is a third one. So a lot of the work that we do starts out with, in the real world, some pretty dirty data that we have to work with and prepare that. And that will take some effort and skill to develop methodologies and analytics that work with the data that are available to us. And we'll spend a lot of time in the program on that. How do we be efficient at gathering data from our organization and prepare it for the analytics so that when we do the analytics, we're working on the best available information. So there's a number of soft skills that are important. We think those are important, and we integrate those into the Capstone program. So for you as a student, what does that look like within the context of the program? The Capstone is actually a core required course. It's 4 of your required course units. And the way that you'll experience it is over the course of the project. This would happen if you are in the 11-month cycle at in the spring quarter, your last quarter. Some students also choose our 17-month track, in which case they might take Capstone in the following fall. So you have your choice and some flexibility there. And what will happen is you'll rank projects that we present to you. So we'll typically create a project book. You can look through them, see which ones fit your needs in terms of interests, in terms of type of companies you might be interested in engaging with, or the types of industries. We then go through an exercise and we assign teams to projects. As I said, they're typically 4 to 6 person teams, and you'll execute that project as a team over a course of 12 weeks. We have a couple of midpoints, connection review points. One is a midterm presentation, and then the other is the final presentation, oral presentation. That leads to graduation from the program. But finally then is a company presentation. So you're the sponsor company you'll be working with. You'll take all the hard work that you've done. You'll work with our communications people and design and practice a great presentation, and then go and present it to the organization. And so that's the path of the capstone. And here's an example calendar, what it might look like. So these are the capstone projects that we're going to run this spring in 2022. You'll see each one follows a cycle, which is very consistent with it. If you were an actual consultant out in the real world, what would you do? And we map onto that so it's as realistic as possible. But a company or a customer in this case will propose projects to us, we collect those, and then you'll go through a cycle of planning your project, executing the project, and presenting the project. And then, as I mentioned, I've run a number of capstones as a company in my previous life, and over 25 years, I can tell you that this process is logical. It's well organized and allows teams to work the way they want to work, but also make sure that by the end of the project, you've got something that's demonstrable that your sponsor company will find value with, but also, and importantly, gives you a good deliverable and a good story that you'll be able to use in your own job search and your career development over time. So this is a sample of what it might look like over that 12-week period. And then the types of companies within Capstone that we work with are quite diverse. We do this on purpose. We want a range of companies. We do tend to lean towards more local companies in the San Diego, Southern California region, and larger companies, but we have companies that are international and companies that are based across the US. You'll see a range of them here. So you can look at the type of industry and kind of company that you're interested in, and typically choose from the ones that we'll have. And then those companies bring to us a diverse set of projects. You can look at some of them here, and I'll go through a few more in a little bit of detail. But it's a range. All of them, though, have as I mentioned, 3 core components. One is descriptive analytics, or we call it EDA, exploratory data analytics, where you get to know the company and get to know their data. We all want most of them to have a predictive component, so do modeling, leveraging the skills that you learn in the program. And the prescriptive element, which is, if we do all this modeling, how do we translate that into business value? And sometimes that's a set of recommendations simply on how valuable that model that you've built is. In most cases, since you're a student team, we'll tell the companies that what you're delivering to them might be a great final solution, but it also might be a good prototype, a good way for them to start thinking about and analyzing a certain business challenge within their business. And that's mostly what happens, and that's tremendous value for companies. Starting in 2022 and 2023, if you're looking at next year as a place to start, we are introducing a couple of specialized tracks within the Capstone arena. One is around supply chain. One of our partners is a center of the Institute of Supply Chain Excellence and Innovation. It's based within Rady. And we've got a board that has supply chain officers from FedEx and Hershey's and great companies. So we'll take that focus and we'll introduce more projects that have a supply chain focus. We'll also have some specialized focus on things that are of interest. So if you're interested in digital marketing places, one of our professors is one of the preeminent faculty in marketing and focusing on digital workplaces and digital marketplaces. And that's Ken Wilbur. And so we're recruiting more projects in this area. So we're very topical, and we're very focused on areas that will allow you to leverage your skills, but also hopefully engage your interests as well. So here's just 5 short examples of projects. If you're interested in marketing, a typical project might look at optimizing media mix for a consumer products targeting campaign. If you know anything about marketing these days, it's data-driven, it's more sophisticated, and these are great projects and very creative. I also mentioned supply chain operations a second ago. Some simple sample projects would be things like predicting service failures within supply chain nodes. That's obviously very topical right now. We live in Southern California. Long Beach is the pier up north of us, which is having a whole lot of problems getting just getting products off the ships and out to stores. And so focusing on how to reduce those types of bottlenecks is an important topic right now. And we have some projects going on in the area. Another one that's coming up is really around environmental sustainability. So looking at things like how to optimize the supply chain around carbon emissions will be a future project. So very topical, interesting areas. We also look for those that have both business and social practical value. Topical interests as well. So COVID obviously has been with us now for the past nearly 2 years. That impacts lots of businesses. We have a couple of projects going on, which is looking at how audiences at theme parks and other areas are impacted and by global pandemic conditions. And one of the interesting things for a lot of companies is as the world starts opening up again, how is that going to impact them? How can they forecast demand within their parks and staff and plan their operations appropriately? So actually pretty high stakes projects. And then for those of you out there that might be looking for more of a challenge, a number of requests typically come in for sophisticated solutions. We'll look at these in the cohort that we have on an interest level. For example, life sciences space is often interests in things like optimizing around inventory or replenishment decisions. Good example here. The product deliverable here might be a presentation around how to optimize inventory, but maybe also prototyping a web app using something like Shiny. So it gives you the opportunity not just to do some data analysis, but to potentially build at least a starter tool that the company can use to leverage your results. And then last of all, for some of you who want more exposure to, let's say, working with very large data sets, we'll typically work with companies that may be in the social media area or the financial services area. And the nice thing about these projects is a great example to learn to work with large data, do large data management. And there are certain industries that have a lot of interest, like financial services, and certainly value there is that they pay a premium for talent that can help them within these areas. So overall, what we're looking for in our capstones is an array of projects that would be of interest to you, but also challenge you in this program. The one thing about the MSBA program is it's rigorous. We're providing a broad skill base with the degree itself, and it ends with the capstones, which we find that people are engaged with, are fun, but they're also challenging. And just by way of a data point, this year we actually engaged some of our prior alumni to help just talk with some of our teams, share with them their experiences over the course of the projects. And I think we actually have out of the project, we have about half of the projects actually have an alumni participant, somebody that acts as a coach. And so our students do come back, they find them very rewarding. And it's a great way also to stay engaged with UCSD, Rady in the program over time as an alumni. So that really is a real quick overview on the Capstone project for you. And what I'll do now is just turn it back over to Emily and open it up. And if you have any questions about what the Capstone is or how we administer it, we'll take those now.
Thanks, Keith. So all right, everyone, you just heard a great presentation about the Capstone project component. We are open for questions. So if you are comfortable and you want to actually ask your question, feel free to use the hand raise option under the reaction button on your dashboard. Or if you prefer and you just want to type your question into the chat box, then I will ask the question as well. I will get us started with the first question, which is, Keith, can you talk a little bit about grading of the capstone? Does a grade come from the company who sponsored it? Are they grading the students? Are faculty grading the students? How does that work?
Yeah, there's a final examination is the one grading element of Capstone. So by the time we get to Capstone, we want you to start transitioning from student to a professional. And so it's a pass-fail component with the Capstone projects. And what we do with companies, we do ask them to provide you feedback directly. We'd also highly encourage you to do that. It will be part of your futures as well. It's a great way of kind of getting ongoing feedback from a company. So In most cases, the companies will provide written feedback directly to the team. They don't necessarily deliver them back to Rady unless we ask for them, but what we're really interested in is how to improve the program itself. So you'll be assessed on a pass-fail basis. That said, it's good feedback. What will happen is at the end of the quarter, you as a team will meet with a set of faculty members, typically 2 to 3. You'll present to them. It's a short presentation, no more than 15 or 20 minutes, gives you a chance to deliver the value of your project and have them give you commentary on it. And then you will typically meet with them individually, and they'll give you direct feedback on your participation in the project as well.
Great. We have another question about choosing the project. What if there are 2 groups of students who want the same project, or rather, what if there are more students who express a certain project as being their top choice?
Sure. So the process we have is we'll give you a project book, allows you to see all the projects, what they are. You'll rank them, typically 1 through 5. So you'll give us 5 choices. And one of our faculty has actually built an optimization tool using OpenSolver for us. And what that does is allow us to match you to projects based on interest, as well as trying to balance out teams in terms of, we'll get to know you very well over the course of the projects. And so we'll look at putting teams together that we think will work well together, have a balance of skill sets. But in almost all cases, people will get one of their top 5 choices. You may not get your first choice, that's true, but in all cases, you'll find that there are a number of projects that interest you. And so you'll be assigned to a team, and most likely you'll be assigned to one of your top 3, if not 5 projects.
All right. So another question, can you please explain how individuals are graded in this group experience?
Okay, same thing. It's a pass-fail. So this is a required course. It's a 4-unit course, but at the end of the day, the assessment comes in 2 ways. One is as you're used to as students, which is the pass-fail. So and in most cases, it's rare that you're going to fail, frankly, unless the project really kind of you didn't pay attention to it, and your team was off getting jobs and doing other things, and you don't complete the project. But that doesn't happen. What we're looking for here is now for you to transition and be stepping up to the consultant and business professional role. That said, there's plenty of opportunities for feedback. So the feedback will come from, 1, working with your faculty supervisor over the course of the project. You'll be looking at making sure that the project is working well, that you're asking the right questions. So one of the areas that typically we focus a lot on is how to take a company's business problem and translate that into an analytics question, a hypothesis, and a strategy for answering that hypothesis. And that's a good area for feedback. The second is the business communications coaches, which are going to help you present and refine your presentation of your results more effectively to your companies and to your audience. And then the third is during the final exam process. Well, you're going to be getting oral feedback as well as the pass-fail grade.
Great. A couple of more questions. One, is the Capstone project considered an internship or an external consulting project? And then 2, how do students, how would they convey the Capstone project on their resume for a future employer to?
Oh, yeah, great question. It is not an internship, and it is not a consulting engagement. It's actually a required course. So it's going to be participation in a required course for the program. So in effect, either it's part of your learning experience. And then when you partner with the companies, in most all cases, what will happen is you'll be signing an NDA at the beginning of the project, because you're going to be getting confidential information from the company that you'll analyze. And what that'll do is typically restrict you from sharing their raw data out to the rest of the world, which we don't want to have happen. And it will also stipulate some areas of confidentiality. And you'll see that beginning the projects. In most cases, since these are student teams, the NDAs are straightforward. They give you the opportunity to reveal the name of the company and the nature of the project. What they typically won't do is want you to go into detail, anything that might be considered intellectual property for them. So if you think about it, you could talk perhaps about developing a demand forecasting model for a company to support their supply chain operations and how effectively you did that. Maybe there's some metrics around forecast accuracy that you can reveal. They don't want you to talk about is the specifics of their business, the specifics of, say, the drivers of the model, the weights associated with that effectively a competitor might get some value from. So that's it. So if you think about it, what we'll typically do, and we'll work with you at the end process, is creating a summary way of putting that into your resume and into a conversation. And those are the elements we'll cover: the type of project you did, the type of company it was, how you solved the problem, and then the nice thing about focusing on the prescriptive element is what the company saw as the perceived value of these projects. And typically, in most cases, that is a good story and a good part of your career and job search storyline.
Fantastic. I just have one last question. If I don't see any hands raised and I haven't seen any additional questions come into the chat, so this is going to kind of be a last call while I ask this last question. I also want to let everyone know that this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be posted to the Rady School's YouTube channel probably within the next week. So if you're interested in the recording, navigate to YouTube, look up the Rady School of Management, and in the next kind of 3 to 5 business days, you will find a recording of this webinar there. So I'm going to ask this question and then I'll check again for any other questions that came in. But Keith, can you tell us a little bit about how capstones translate into an internship or a job offer? Is this a pathway to an internship or a job, or do we see students getting an offer or building kind of professional networks that might lead Capstone into a job offer?
Yeah, great question. That is a fundamental part of this part of our program as well. So most of the companies, one of the criteria we have in choosing the companies that we work with is, are they hiring in the space for business analytics people, for data science people? And so, yes, that's definitely a way. And we have companies that are explicitly doing this with us because they're interested in screening for talent. And they can do that a couple of ways. One, and also that would relate to both hiring as well as internships with those companies. And so it comes about in a couple of different ways. The companies, by participating with us, also get access to our job fairs, to our networking events within UCSD and Rady, as well as student events. So they have a couple of different ways engaging with us. So from the company standpoint, that's a lot of value for them. And from a student standpoint, that's exactly what happens. You'll be working with a specific company for a period of time. It will give you a chance to showcase your interests and what you can do. And interesting to me, we also have a number of students that have gone to work, not necessarily with the company they did their project with, but other companies that participating in Capstone projects. And they've done that by connecting with them either over the course of the Capstone networking opportunities. So while this fall, we have 28 different projects running. So those are 28 companies that have been able to engage with an array of different students. So it is one of the very effective, qualified ways of finding companies that you may be interested in pursuing career paths.
Great. Another question came in. Can you talk a little bit about how project options might vary between capstone projects that are in the spring versus capstone projects that are in the fall?
Not too much difference, actually. What we try to do is I talked about, we want a range of projects that cross industry, that cross topical areas. So we are looking for that. We do have a sense of when our cohort comes in. Emily will know you all pretty well. She's very personal in terms of reviewing and working and learning who you are. And our faculty will learn who you are. Since the program is, one of the things that's unique, I think, about Rady is it's a very tailored program. Our MSBA program, while it's one of the larger programs, we have about 100 people coming in a cohort. So we'll get to know you very well. We have a career center that's going to work with you as well. So what we want to know is what you want to learn and apply that in the overall instructional program. We also want to learn what your interests are. And that will have some impact on the types of projects that we're recruiting for any particular cohort. If there's a lot of interest in a particular topical area and we can match to projects in that area, then we'll do that. But overall, between spring and fall, you'll find them pretty similar.
Fantastic. All right, so I see one last question that came in that I think I will answer, which is this info session and does it qualify for an application fee waiver? This info session does not. So this attendees, we're super excited that you joined us, but this session is not eligible for an application fee waiver. With that, I don't see any other questions lingering. So I'm going to do kind of a last call, and then Keith, I don't know if you have any parting words that you would like to say.
I'll give people a chance to ask any final questions. My parting words is we hope, I very much appreciate you joining today. I think Emily and I both do. And we hope to see a number of you on our lovely campus at UCSD in San Diego next year.
Absolutely. I'm just going to throw into the chat box there. That's my email address. So if you have questions or concerns, you're always welcome to reach out. Like I said, a recording of this webinar will be made available on the Rady YouTube page within the next week. So you can navigate there to find a recording. Otherwise, thank you again all so much for joining us, whether it's early in the morning for you or late at night. We look forward to working with you and hopefully to see your application come in, and then hopefully being able to welcome you to the Rady School in person.